Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, my subject today is betrayal, hurt, and forgiveness, as you just heard. And I want to start off by saying that this is an account of my personal journey. We heard a very melodious kirtan by Pai Sabji, and the last Shabad said that Mat koi jane avar kuch, sab prab ke haath. Whatever is happening in our lives, the karta, the doer is the same. Sometimes that is very hard to accept. Sometimes we wonder, is that a Kalpurak who's the doer really wants us to experience this much hurt? The sthai of the Shabad was Eho Sagar Soi Tare Jo Har Gun Gai. We listen to Gurbani because it gives us strength, because it's transformational. So, listening is the first step to imbibing it and then to living it. And living it is where it becomes really tough, particularly when what we are experiencing is far from easy. Now, betrayal and hurt, at some point in life, we have all experienced. We've all gone through this journey. And it's tough. It's not easy to come to terms with it. And forgiveness certainly is not easy. And sometimes one wonders, is forgiveness even necessary? Is it even possible? What I'm going to share with you is from the perspective of Gurbani that I learned when I went through what seemed to me, and perhaps also was, the biggest betrayal of my lifetime. Those of you who have heard me before know that for me, the Shabad Guru is truly, truly the living Guru. And I take everything that I have to say to my Guru and seek guidance and then try my best to follow it. So, this talk, this presentation came from the Guru directly and really contains what I learned. Now, everybody has a right to differ, and everybody's journey is different, and circumstances are different, and the recourse one takes may be different. What I'm sharing with you is my personal journey. So, what is dhoka and why does it happen? Gurbani tells us, Har bisrat sada kuwari, tako dhoka kaha byape, jako ot tuhari. When you are my support, my beloved, then who can betray me? Does anyone have the capacity, the capability to betray someone who is the Guru's own? Or is this a milestone? Perhaps an opportunity for growth? Perhaps an equalizing of karma? Who knows the play of hukam? It's tough. It's tough to understand why, what is happening. But if we remember that when we are in the care of the beloved who loves us, who never abandons us, then that dhoka cannot hurt us. It is something else. For me, it was an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to be free. So let's move on. Why does all this happen? While we embody in us the light of the divine, Mantu Jyot Swarup hai, right? At the same time, We were also given by the divine the vices, right? Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar, ego. All of these are the play of Maya. They entice us, they trouble us, they challenge us to grow, and their play is, Gurbani tells us, it's like a serpent's dance that can sting us and hurt us and poison us. Chalang, chidrang, kot, bikanang, aparadhang, kilbik, malang, param, mohang, man, apamanang, madang, maya, vyapatu. So all the bad things that happen, whether it's disease or fraud or betrayal or anything that we do or experience that is of, let's say, negative proclivity, the mistakes we make, the evil that happens in the world, the emotional attachments, pride, any of those things, they are a play of Maya. And awareness that this is what Maya is doing to us, and that the light in us, the divine light in us, can be diminished by them. And the constant battle that is happening within us is between the play of Maya, of which ego is a very big thing, and the corollaries of Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar playing within us. This is what is causing us dhoka of any sort. So how do we handle this particular dhoka, which is of betrayal? Now, betrayal happens in the most trusted relationships. People that we are closest to, people that we love the most, people that we consider our very own. It happens because of a misunderstanding. It happens because people are lying, people are cheating, they are, humiliating us, or they are rejecting us, or they have their own drive of gaining power. The greed in them is dominating at that moment. Any of those things can cause betrayal to happen. Gurbani tells us, Kal Yug mein tare panch chor chagraye, like I explained. Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Abhiman, Vadhai. So they can either dominate us, these five vices, or we can try to conquer them. And also remember that, we are fallible. We make mistakes. Whether it's us or the other person, we are all fallible. We all make mistakes. And it's from that hurt comes. पुल्लन अंदर सबको अपुल गुरु करतार एक वाहिगुरु है जो अपुल है. सो कई बारी ऐ समझ नहीं आता. वी थिंक कि दूसरा बंदा ही गलती कर रहा है, ਅਸੀਂ ठीक है क्या. बट टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट ਅਸੀਂ भी गलत हो सकते हैं sometimes goes a long way in grasping what is going on, in evoking empathy. So, staying on the subject of betrayal, what does it do? It, those of us who have experienced it, it causes a lot of pain. It makes us angry. Why did it happen? How could this person do this? Why do I have to go? I trusted this person. They can do this to me? And then the confusion. How do I handle it? Should I lash out and get even? Should I teach them a lesson? What is happening to this relationship? And sometimes there is a desire to make up, to go back to the time that was wonderful, when the relationship was beautiful. But above all, there is this longing or yearning to get rid of this pain, because the pain is unbearable. And all of us handle it differently, depending on what the play of the five senses is. अनेक जतन करे इंद्री वस ना होए ना गुस्सा साढ़े वस आंदा है ना दर्द साढ़े वस होंदी है कुछ समझ नहीं आंदा कि की हो रहा है की हो रहा है क्यों होया है और हुन की करिए how do we handle this now when the pain is not resolved it festers like a worm there is bitterness those of us who have experienced it, and I have talked about this subject earlier, and many people have said to me that we felt that you were speaking about us because this is universal. This bitterness, this breaking of bonds, this diminishing of trust, it teaches us because everything that happens, we've all heard this, is there is a reason for this, right? For me, that reason always is, or always has been, that this is my opportunity for spiritual growth. This is my opportunity, perhaps, to try and move towards detachment, which is what the Guru teaches us. To understand that the relationships in the world are false. That however much I have valued them, they don't last. They change. The bitter truth of Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib has said, Jagat mein jhoothi dekhi preet. We experience it. People are motivated by their own sukh, by their own need, by their own whatever it is that is driving them. अपने ही सुख स्यों सब लागे क्या तारा क्या मीत your spouse, your nearest relationships, your family, those that you consider your own are driven by what they think is going to benefit them. And it's tough to accept this because we are attached. And instead of being attached to the one that never changes, we are attached to our worldly relationships, and that's Maya too, our attachment. So, how does one resolve this? How does one get over this? How does one restore trust? Is it even possible? Can any positive outcomes come from betrayal? Can healing happen? Sometimes what happens is so big, so huge, that it may seem that forgiveness is not possible. Is it possible in all circumstances? Can these negative feelings really be put to bed? They say that dukh daru sukh rog pya, that dukh becomes the transformational drive or factor and brings sukh. Really? Suffering can transform to something bigger, something better, something positive? But the ego is so huge. It gives you so many reasons not to forgive. It stands in your way. It's like a wall. And the driving thought at that time is this, that you have to teach this person a lesson. You're not thinking about your own growth at that time. You're not thinking that this dukh has come for me to overcome it, for me to turn to the Guru, to ask for guidance. All that you're thinking about is, I'm going to teach this person a lesson. And we often say, as Sikhs, We are not supposed to turn the other cheek. We're supposed to fight against tyranny. We're supposed to raise the sword. We're supposed to not put up with things that are wrong. That is in our DNA, to fight against the wrong. However, think about it. Is the wrong of that magnitude that we have to whip out the sword, which as a community we are happy to do? We've seen that happen so often, especially in our places of worship where it doesn't need to happen at all. We don't take things lying down because we think we're not supposed to, that our 10th Guru taught us to fight it. But the 10th Guru also said that when all other peaceful means fail, it is lawful to resort to the sword. We don't grasp the moment. Asar apna bujhe na yana. We are foolish because that hurt becomes dear to us and we want to live in it. And then what happens is that grasp of Maya, that becomes stronger. वो लिपट जाता है साडे नाल, वो दुख जड़ा ना वो दुखी करता है होर, वो चिपक जाता है साडे नाल, वो छड्डा नहीं है और वो साडी कमजोरी बन जाता है। बदले दी भावना जिहड़ी है ना, जदों वो आंदी है, वो सानू उच्चे नहीं लैके जांदी, वो ड्रैग डाउन कर देंदी है और वो आंदी है कि लेसन सिखाओ, right? Those of us who have experienced it, I'm sure they'll know what I'm talking about. पर उतरों गुरबानी कहती है कि forgiveness सब कुछ है। कबीरा जहाँ ज्ञान तय धर्म है, जहाँ झूठ तय पाप, जहाँ लोभ तय काल है, जहाँ खिमा तय आप। इतना बड़ा स्टेटस देता है forgiveness ने। It's extolled so much that where there is forgiveness, the divine resides. Do we get it? Really? I have to forgive to be close to the divine? Bal bal jaun sham sundar ko, another Shabad Bhai Sahib ji sang so beautifully. This is the step we have to take to clear our own inner struggle, pollution, man, and slowly walk to the Guru's house. This is what I've experienced. But Maya taji ta kya kaya जो मान तचा नहीं जाए। मान जड़ा ना, मैं क्यों माफी मांगा या मैं क्यों माफ करा, गलती उसकी है, माफी मैं मांगा। And then the other thought comes, if I ask for forgiveness, then the other person will think they're right. And why should I? I wasn't wrong. This tussle continues. Man, ego, they become barriers. They become barriers to where the divine doesn't reside in us. Because the divine loves forgiveness. The divine loves that feeling of na ko bari, na hi begana. Sakal sang humko banai. Kithe banandi hai jado betrayal hondi hai. I'm explaining this in detail so that you understand that I understand the struggle. And Gurbani explains the struggle, understands what we go through. It's not easy. Maya taji to kya bhaya jo maan taja nahi jaye. नहीं तजा जाता, नहीं छड्या जाता. And then what happens? मान मुनि मुनवर गले, मान सबे को खाए, वो खा जाता है. It eats away at our peace, it eats away at our growth, and it eats away at our spiritual evolution if we hang on to pride, if we hang on to ego, if we hang on to hurt, if we hang on to the feelings of them and us. ये परम है. This division in our mind. And I'm not saying that the person who hurt us is right. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that it's part of the hukam that is playing out. It is the continuum of the play of karma. Jo main kiya, so main paya. It's very difficult to understand when bad things are happening that this is a continuum, that something that I may have done caused it. Another reason Babaji tells us, Gurbani tells us to forgive is that when we forgive, there is a sense of peace that comes within us. We don't have to forgive for the sake of the other person, the one who hurt us. We have to forgive because we want to be at peace. And if your peace comes from taking the person to court, to trying to resolve things in a different way, then figure it out in your mind. If that is what's going to give the best outcome, that will give you peace. How many years it will take to resolve this? Will the outcome be in your favor? Those recourses are always open to us. They are there. You can seek justice from the justice system, or you can decide that, I'm going to let go and justice will happen. It's a choice. In many ways, there are choices. We sometimes think that we don't have them, but we do have. How much? Honestly, I don't know. How much is destiny's place and how much choice do we have? We do have choice. For me, the biggest choice is that I can pray. गुर मिलिए हमको शरीर सुध पई हमें तृष्णा सब अगन बुझे. वो जड़ी फायर है ना अंदर गुस्से दी, वो बुझानी है. बिन से क्रोध खिमा गए. वो क्रोध उदों ही जाएगा ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਖਿਮਾ ਨੂੰ ਪਕੜਾਂਗੇ. हर आपे कृपा करे नाम देवे गुरमुख रतन को विरला लेवे. Forgiveness has been described as a singar, as a jewel. It's up to us whether to adorn it or to struggle in anger and feelings of revenge. What is our goal in life? We have to go back home. This is our opportunity. And what do we need to do for that? Stephen Covey, who's a thinker, who's a corporate advisor, and teaches business people on how to get the best outcome in their business, says that keep the end in mind, no matter what you do. Our end in mind is to go back and meet with the divine. To meet with the divine, the biggest virtue we have to inculcate is humility. सबको निवे आपको, पर को निवे ना कोई, तर तराजू तोलिए निवे सो गौरा होए. Humility is very dear to the divine. When we think we are right, we are not being humble. When we constantly feel that the other person is wrong and we are riding a high horse of anger, which is causing all kinds of discomfort in our body, blood pressure, heart issues. Disease is nothing other than the lack of ease, and anger and resentment and unresolved issues become the psychosomatic reasons for disease. And if anyone is a physician listening to this, these days they say that most diseases have their root in the mind, in the psychosomatic issues that are unresolved, lifestyle issues, what we think, what we put in our body. We always talk about food, but the thoughts are very important. And humility is the doorway to the divine, which is our goal. So that is the number one reason provided by Sri Guru Granth Sahib to forgive. गुर प्रसाद लागे नाम स्वाद काहे जन्म गवाओ बैरवाद छोटी जी जिंदगी है ਜਦੋਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਨੇ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਗੁਰ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕੀਨੀ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਬਿਮਾਨ ਉਦੋਂ ਲੱਥ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਹੈ ਈਗੋ ਦਾ ਮਸਲਾ ਮਾਮਲਾ. And another thing is beautiful can be heard दासा की बात जित कीता पाए आपना सा काल बुरी क्यों खालिए मंदा मूल न कीजे दे लंबी नजर निहालिए. When we know, when we are told in no uncertain terms that I am going to reap what I am sowing, then why am I sowing the seeds of evil, thoughts of resentment, thoughts of anger? Guru tells us, throw the dice in such a way that you shall not lose with your master, with your beloved. Do that which brings you gain. How do you do it? That is the question. We've gone over the benefits of forgiveness. Okay, wonderful. But what is the process? Forgiveness is not easy. It starts with a decision that I am not going to carry this baggage. ए मेरे वास्ते पार चढ़ा ना ए औखा है चुकना. When I take my last breath, I want to be free of resentment. I want to be free of anger or more or any of those things that can pull me back, that will make the sanskars carry over. For me, the biggest reason for forgiveness was I don't want to carry this baggage. I don't feel good when I feel resentment. And there's a way to deal with it, which we'll look at. But the number one thing is you have to make a decision. Another way of handling it is we look at the other person's point of view. एक तो हैगा कि असी सारे भुल्लनहारा अब भुल सिर्फ करता आ रहा है. Person may have made a mistake or may not have, may have been just power driven. Or, this is very important, may be hurting himself or herself. In my life, I've learned that only those people hurt who are hurting themselves. जो दुखी है ना वो होरां नूं दुखी करता है. जरा न्यूट्रल माइंड है ना वो किसी नूं तंग नहीं करता. Someone who's at peace वो नहीं स्कीम करता. जो माया विच जकड़ा होया है ना वो ही दुखी करता है. And in the big picture, the non-linear picture, the continuum of life. You know, we are a blip. In the blink of an eye, we are gone. We are a speck in the universe. So it's going to be so over so quickly. What am I going to gain from blame and bad mouthing? Even if it is deserved, it is ruining my peace. So, in my journey, I decided yes, I had recourse. I could take the perpetrators of betrayal to court. I could struggle and carry on the court case, which would probably take years. The outcome is unknown. Yes, from what I could see, I could tell it was clear that the wrong was done, and perhaps it would be clear in the justice system. But in the meantime, what would be my frame of mind? Certainly not peaceful. So I chose not to go that route, but to let go, not to carry that baggage at all. You may make a different decision, and that's your journey. Another thing I realized was that I've referred to it that the inner conflict is only going to ruin me. I've dwelt on this enough, so I'm going to move on. When you, just one more thought, which is very important. When you see things from a larger perspective and empathy develops, बुरा भला तुझ सब किछ सूझे जेहा को करे तेहा को पाए. We understand that if the person, just like for me, I am reaping what I'm sowing, so is the other person. So for me, it was all right. You know what? There is justice beyond worldly justice, and I'm going to let it be. In the process of forgiveness, it's very, very important, I felt, to acknowledge that I was hurt, that something wrong has happened, that I am choosing not to blame, and perhaps at that moment not even to understand, but to let go. Could I have done something different? Could I have been more watchful? Could I have understood that human nature can cause these kind of incidents and I need to be more careful, perhaps more protected of my assets or whatever it was? Blame led me nowhere. Now, there is a transactional model of forgiveness, and sometimes that is possible. In my case, it wasn't. Sometimes, if two people can get together and talk about what happened, the person who is hurt expresses the hurt to the person who has hurt you, and the realization comes to the wrongdoer that yes, I did something wrong, then there is a possibility of healing. of perhaps undoing what you've done, giving back to the person what you took, whether it was money or whatever it may be, but accepting that, yes, I did something wrong by the wrongdoer. That can heal. That can salvage a relationship. And also genuinely asking for forgiveness. आजकल पता है कि होता है, well, if I hurt you, I didn't mean to, but if you were hurt, I'm sorry. No, that's not forgiveness. That's not asking for forgiveness. Forgiveness, true forgiveness, when you ask for it, is, I'm sorry. I realize that I hurt you. Forgive me. And then not doing it again. But how often is it even possible? As we've seen, our ego is too big. It's very difficult to accept, very difficult कि तुसी गलत कीता है. Because you know what? Everybody thinks that they are right. Everybody. कोई विरला ही है जरा सोचेगा कि मैं गलती कीती है. ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ना नम्रता, ह्यूमिलिटी बहुत ज़रूरी. और वो आनी बहुत औखी है. Because as we have seen, मान, अभिमान, अहंकार वो दीवार बन के खड़ा हो जाता है. So, genuinely seeking forgiveness, you cry, you hug, you renew the relationship. Sometimes a crack is left. Sometimes healing does happen. It happened in a small way with me when I did something wrong. I went and asked for forgiveness. By Guru's grace, I'm never hesitant to ask for forgiveness when I realize that I acted in haste or in anger. It was a small thing, but it could have become a big thing. And the space was created for the relationship to be renewed by my asking for forgiveness. But in the instance where I felt I was wrong, the perpetrator, I don't think they've realized at all that they've done any wrong, because they've made no move to acknowledge it or to ask for forgiveness or to undo it. So reconciliation many times is not possible. Then how does one forgive? Right? We realize forgiveness बहुत बड़ी चीज़ है. I have to move on. I have to do it for myself. But अगला बंदा realize ही नहीं कर रहा कि मैं कुछ गलत किया है. वो तो ठीक है, and is prospering and is enjoying himself from your perspective, from where you can see. You go and badmouth them. That doesn't help. Nobody cares. Seriously, I'm telling you, nobody cares what happened to you. Everybody cares about their relationship with any given person, their gain and their losses. So stop trying to tell people कि होया था. सुनेंगे सारे, but nothing's going to change. Their relationship with that person is not going to change. What you say is only going to be your perspective and your pain, which is not going to lessen just by talking to 10 people. It's not. It's going to lessen only by sharing it with the one that is your beloved, that never leaves you. And so then you hand it over. You give it to the Guru. Really, through prayer, through surrender, through acceptance. You give it to the Guru. Gurbani tells us, Guru ਨਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਬਾਤਾਂ, ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਚਰਚੇ, ਉਹ ਸੁਣਦਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਜਾਣਦਾ ਹੈ, ਨਾਨਕ ਕਰਤਾ ਸਭ ਕੁਛ ਜਾਣਦਾ, ਜਿਤੋਂ ਕੁਛ ਗੁੱਚਾ ਨਾ ਹੋਏ, nothing is hidden। ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਦਰਦ ਹੈ, ਚਿੰਤੀ ਤੇ ਗੁੱਜਰ ਰਸੂਲਾ ਸਭ ਪਰ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਜਿਸ ਕਰ ਫੁੱਲਾ, ਸਭ ਦੀ ਦਰਦ ਸਭ ਜਾਣਦਾ ਹੈ, ਕੋਈ ਛੋਟਾ ਹੈ, ਕੋਈ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੈ, ਸਭ ਤੇ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੀ। ਔਰ ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਨਿੰਦਾ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਨਿੰਦਾ is not just words, ਨਿੰਦਾ is also action, someone that has harmed you। ਨਿੰਦਕਾਂ ਪਾਸੋਂ ਹਰ ਲੇਖਾ ਮੰਗਸੀ, ਉਹ ਦੇਖੇਗਾ ਕਿ ਨਿਆਏ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਨਿਆਏ, ਬਹੁ ਦੇ ਸਜਾਏਗੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੇਗੀ ਸਜ਼ਾ। Because this is a universal law, the law of जो मैं किया सो मैं पाया। जेहा निंदक आपने जी कमाते ते हो फल पाए, they will receive their due, their accounts will be considered and they will be punished। You don't wish that, because that creates pollution or mal in your own mind, but trust that there is justice। So give it to the divine, give it to Vaheguru। Reconciliation is not possible because जिन्नी गल बात करोगे उनने उस मुरास विच ज़्यादा पड़ोगे। The betrayal that has happened is so complex। In my case it was, and there was no way that anything that I said could be understood, because I could see the desire for power, the egos were big। Handing it over to the Guru gave me peace। I felt that in my life, the presence of the divine was there, and they couldn't hurt me. They could take away things, but they couldn't hurt me। And when I moved on, I felt free, I felt good। Which karta purakh loya, val na vinga hoa। What they said to anyone or not, it was not my concern। जिसदा साहिब टाटा होए, जिसनू मार ना सके कोई। After years, I'm sharing my journey, I truly felt that what happened was for my good, for my growth। Another thing that I started doing was that I started praying. When the anger and the hurt diminished, I felt that it was time to move on, that this relationship could not be mended. And I accepted whatever happened. And I started praying. Whenever the thought of what they did came to my mind, I said, Rasila, bless you। This was very different from the initial thoughts of, you're going to realize what you did, you're going to come to your knees and ask for forgiveness, one day I want to see you regret this। Very different। It's a journey, you go through that as well। You go through the desire to see the person suffer like you are suffering, but you know, all that does is like I felt. It was pollution of my heart, of my mind. It was a barrier to my Simran, to my Ardas of Sarbatta Pala, to my being, to my neutral mind that strives to live in Nako Vari Nahi Begana. When I realized that ਮੈਨੂੰ ਭਰੋਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਦਾ ਪਤਿਤ ਉਦਾਹਰਣ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਮੋਹਿ ਤਿਸਕਾ ਪਰਵਾਸਾ ਬਖਸ਼ ਲਏ ਸਭ ਸੱਚੇ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸੋ ਨਾਨਕ ਕੀ ਅਰਦਾਸਾ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਖਸ਼ੋ ਔਰ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਬਖਸ਼ੋ ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦਾ ਭਲਾ ਇਹ कोई छोटी चीज नहीं है. This is an expansion of the mind. This is an expansion of the consciousness. And everything is about consciousness. The divine consciousness is the purest, the highest. And if we have to live in that, we cannot live in struggle. We cannot live in strife. Now, it's not always possible to go back to that relationship. In my case, it wasn't. So how long am I going to lament the parting of ways? Not going to. I was amazed when one day during my Sahaj part, when I was still struggling, I came across this line, Nanak man mukha nalo tutti bali, jin maya moh pyar. जिन्हां ने धोखा देता है किसी नू भी. You don't call them manmukh, but they are driven by manmukh tendencies. And if you break off with them, and if there is a parting of ways, then so be it. There are seasons that change. There are relationships that change. If people continue on the ways that are hurtful to you, instead of continuing to strive and be pained, pray for them and seek your own way. In your heart, say, I forgive you. And the words may seem hollow, but slowly, the words of Gurbani, clear the man. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਨੇ ਨਾ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਝ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਿਖਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ. ਇਹੋ ਸਾਗਰ ਸੋਈ ਤਰੇ ਜੋ ਹਰ ਗੁਣ ਗਾਵੇ. Coming back to the ਸ਼ਬਦ that was sung. ਹਰ ਇਹ ਔਖਾ ਹੈ ਸਾਗਰ, ਇਹ ਜਲਨ ਦਾ ਸਾਗਰ, ਇਹ ਦੁੱਖ ਦਾ ਸਾਗਰ. This fiery ocean is very hard to traverse. It troubles us. But when we chant, slowly we are scrubbed. Bani scrubs us. It's like an isnan. Mood paliti kapar hoy, te sapun liye uthoy. Ways to wash the body are different. Ways to wash the mind are different. वो धूप है नावे के संग जो मन दी मैल है ना वो पानी उतारती है. If we truly look at Gurbani as the guru that guides, the guru whose teachings we have to follow, really live them. Gurbani baniye. Become the Bani. Start living the Bani. Satgur ki Bani Sat Swarup hai. Gurbani baniye. औखा है. Guru tells us, Jan Nanak, eh khel kathin hai. Khanyo tikhi waloni ki. It's not easy. But it's doable. Otherwise, why would Shabad Guru be a living Guru? Important to get out of that dupita. Dupita mein takima hai. Raho karam taram ki suhi na saho. वो ਜਿਹੜੀ ਦਰਦ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਇਸਦੇ ਬਗੈਰ। ਖਿਮਾ ਵਿਹੂਣੇ ਖਪ ਗਏ ਕੋਹਨ ਲੱਖ ਅਸਰ। It hurts, it festers. I love this line. पर का बुरा ना राखो चित. Forget about doing it. Don't think of it. Don't think of doing something bad to someone. And that is the formula of तुमको दुख नहीं पाई नींद। किसी दा बुरा नहीं सोचांगी, अपना फायदा है ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ, वो दुख सानू नहीं लगेगा। So that is why forgiveness is a divine gift. खिमा गही पतसील संतोख, रोग ना व्यापे ना जम दोखा, मुकत पे प्रभु रूप ना रेखा। I often share the story of what happened to me when I was going through this very difficult time. I had an orchid plant that had died because I neglected it. And I felt that the orchid reflected my feelings and my sense of being at that time. It was dead. The joy had gone out of it. But I put it in the windowsill, in the kitchen window, and I started nurturing it. The sun came through the window. I started putting an ice cube in it every week. And I did it for many months, I would think, if I remember correctly. And lo and behold, one day a shoot came out, and then another, and the orchid bloomed again. And I realized then that even when you're down and out and feel dead and lose the will to do anything because you're hurting, when the nurturing and nourishment comes, in the case of plants, from the sun and from the water and from the light, and in us, from the divine light of Gurbani, we bloom again, no matter how hurt we are, how difficult the journey is. So it all starts with a decision, tough journey, but it's for a reason that forgiveness has been called an adornment. Har sigar banavo harjan, har kapat pehro khimka. You know, we love to wear beautiful clothes, designer clothes, clothes that make us look good. Gurbani is telling us, wear the clothes of forgiveness. ऐसा सिगार मेरे प्रभ पावे। अगर सिंगार करना है ना, एडोर्नमेंट करनी है, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਨੂੰ ਪਸੰਦ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਖਿਮਾ ਦੀ ਹੈ। ਆਪਣੇ beloved ਨੂੰ, ਆਪਣੇ ਮਾਲਿਕ ਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਪਾਣਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਤੇ grasp forgiveness. ऐसा सिगार मेरे प्रभ पावे, हर लागे प्यारा प्रेम का, हर हर नाम बहु दिन राती, सब किलबिख काटे एक पल का. It won't even realize when you'll become whole again. Start walking the path of Gurmat. Embrace the teachings, live the teachings, and trust me. Trust me. You'll feel good, you'll feel whole. You may remember what happened, because one doesn't always forget. But you know that edge, the shards of that pain will dissolve. They won't prick you, they won't hurt you, they won't pain you. You look back and say, that's it. Thank you for listening, and embrace Gurbani, live Gurbani. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.